A learner said to me this week, it's impossible to become fluent in English. But today I'm creating this video just for that person and anyone feeling the same, because it definitely is, and I'm going to show you how you can do it in 2024. This video will be done in 3 sections. The first section is all about the common misconceptions that people have that block them from getting to the goal they want to get to. The second section is all about some guidelines that you must put in place in order to get to where you want to go. And the third section is really the action plan, the way of getting. But let's define fluency first. The Cambridge Dictionary says it's the ability to speak or write a language easily, well, and quickly. For some learners, that may seem a little scary, but for me, the definition is a little bit vague. It's not like it's saying you need a band 9 in IELTS to become fluent in English. So it's not so specific, and it can be interpreted in different ways. You could take the interpretation that everything needs to be perfect. You need to have no gaps in your speech. Things need to come to you instantly. It must be the most advanced vocabulary, and you must speak at a very, very natural speed. Or you could take it the way I look at it, which is more from real life experience. Native speakers don't know everything about every subject. So immediately we can take away the idea that you need to know all advanced words in all subjects. If I went to talk to someone about the history of English, they might not know much about it, might not be interested, might be bored with what I'm saying. So in that situation, those people might not be producing maybe advanced language. They might not be speaking quickly back to me. There might be just, massive gaps because they're so bored and things like this. We have to remember that even native speakers don't know everything about the language. For me, fluency is more about how you, in each conversation, how well that you're able to communicate with the other person, they're able to understand your message, and they're able to communicate back with you. And there's less friction throughout the whole conversation. For example, pauses or issues with pronunciation that affect the other person understanding. Now, even within the UK, 2 native speakers who live in opposite ends of the UK, a Scottish person and someone from the south of England, there can be confusion because of pronunciation. So there's almost, you could say then that they're not fluent, but it's not quite true. They're just in a different situation. So situational circumstances also come into play. For example, someone who's a native speaker who then speaks for the first time to 100 people in a meeting might not be the most fluent, might be nervous when they speak. It's very, very common. Even in your own language, you'll probably feel the same. That's why you can't take the definition in such a strict manner and have a bit more play with what fluency actually is. So hopefully that takes some pressure off of you. You don't have to be perfect in every situation. The goal of conversation and communication is for the other person to understand you, and then for you to be able to understand them. And then that's a successful conversation with a bit more back and forth in the middle, of course, but the overall points are there. So the first 2 I'm going to lump together because we kind of mentioned it just in the last bit. But the first one is that textbooks make you fluent, and the second one is that you need advanced language for every topic. These are 2 common things that people tell me. They say that I'm going to study every grammar point, it's going to make me fluent in English. And another side, I'm going to learn as many words as possible. I must be able to understand, and I must be able to say everything very specifically to be fluent in English. Both of these are just not true. Actually, spoken English is quite simple. We use a lot of simple words and we use a lot of repetition. If you are writing a novel, perhaps you need some advanced words because you want to add variety within the book. You rarely see the same word repeated throughout a book. That's why there's so many words that even I might even have to look into a dictionary for, because they're lesser used words. But actually within a conversation, it is very, very simple language used because we want the other person to understand. There is no point in having advanced language and the other person not understanding what you're saying. The goal of a conversation and communication is to communicate between the 2 people. If one person says stuff the other person doesn't understand, fluency's gone, regardless of how advanced the language is. So actually, spoken English is usually quite simplified, even with grammar in some circumstances. The next point is that they can't become fluent because they don't live in a native speaking country. This is just not true. There are so many people who are extremely fluent within English who have never been to a native speaking country. This idea is just an excuse for someone who doesn't want to put in the effort to actually get to where they want to go. I promise you that. But if you want to put the time and effort in, you can definitely become fluent in English. It's definitely possible. Another thing that many people say is they are too introverted to become good in a second language. Now for me, of course, there are people who are introverted 100%, but for me this is still a little bit of an excuse, because what we're not realizing is being introverted and feeling uncomfortable are not the same thing. I've been through this process myself with Japanese. I felt like I couldn't speak to anyone. That doesn't mean I'm an introverted person. It means that I'm not comfortable and I have to break through that comfort barrier, which is what I did. The only way to do that is to speak to more people if you want to improve your spoken fluency. So the goal must always be to push through any uncomfortable situation and make it comfortable. The goal is always to go outside the box, but not to just stay outside the box. You're making the box bigger so that the bit that's outside the box is actually eventually inside the box. That's what we really want. And the last one is that once a week is enough practice. I'm booked in once with my teacher once a week. That's enough. I'm not going to do anything else. No, that's nonsense as well. If you want to become excellent at something, you have to do it regularly and repeatedly. And we're going to look at some ways, some kind of guidelines I put in for a lot of students to help them get to that goal. They are: be consistent, be persistent, be specific, and be patient. Very simple. All things you need if you want to transform your body. For example, you need to go to the gym. You're going to need to be consistent, persistent. You're going to have to be specific on certain muscle groups, and then be patient. These are all things you would do for going to the gym, changing your body. They're all things you would do for dieting as well. You want to be consistent every day. You want to be persistent for a long period of time. You want to be specific on exactly what food you eat. You want to be patient as well, because it takes time. For language, the consistency is practicing every day, even for a short period. That's great. At the beginning, I recommend just 15 minutes each day. 15 minutes, find a time slot. We're going to talk about that. There is time. I'm going to show you how to get that, but practice every day. Very important. Next one is persistent. Make sure you're practicing for a long period of time. Don't think that you can do 1 week of practice and then stop and that's it. No, you've got to continuously go. This takes time. So it's persistency over a long period of time. Think about that. The next one is specific. Specific is the interesting one for many people, because what they don't realize, in my opinion, fluency can be set up into different topics. Actually, you can become fluent at things that you are more confident in, and generally that's the way it works. So for example, I'm an English teacher, so I'm quite confident in talk about things to do with English, so I'm very fluent when I speak. So it can be the same for you. There must be subject areas that you're interested in and that are key for you. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And then also the patience, again, goes hand in hand with persistency. It's a long period of time. Don't worry, you're going to get there. The only people who fail are the people that stop, then never come back to it. If you can continue going, even if you have a blip, you have a day or two off, that's fine, but come back to it, keep going. Remember, it's a long process. You'll get there, promise you that. And now onto your action plan. So the first thing we need to do is find the time. That's why I said I'd come back to this. So what you need to do is make a planner. Very, very simple. You've got the hours of the day along the side here, every hour. And then you've got the days of the week here. And then all you're going to do is you're going to block off everything that is a must. Things that are a must that you must do. For example, sleep. I'm going to put sleep on here. Now work. We have to work. Maybe you do 9 to 5. Work's on. How about food? We have to eat. How about family time? How about commuting time? And there's probably some other small things you want to put on as well. But if you look at this chart, you can see there's a lot of white. That means there's time. For me, I would be putting it at the start of the day. On this chart, this person wakes up at 6. Maybe you can adjust your sleep. You could go to bed at 9, wake up at 5, do a bit in the morning. For me, in the morning it's easier because it's done then. You don't have to think about it after you've finished it. Now you found some time, it's time to be specific. We need to take responsibility of our weaknesses. So We want to work out what our weaknesses are. Once we've done that, we want to do concentrated effort on those things. My recommendation is to not try and fix everything at once. It's better to spend a month on one topic, for example, one type of grammar, stick to that. For example, if you struggle with prepositions, just work on prepositions for 1 month, rather than doing prepositions, articles, single versus plural, conditionals, for example. Just focus on one thing that you need immediately to fix to be able to go forward. If you don't know what your weaknesses are, my suggestion is to get a teacher, not for 100 lessons, maybe for 3 lessons. That's it. Because what you want to do is identify what you're weakest at. Find out what you are really struggling with that can really affect how you communicate with another person, because that's the goal. Remember, the goal of fluency is to communicate with someone, being able to understand what they say, but also to be able to communicate to them effectively. So the only way to do that is to understand what could be blocking that. Sometimes it's a bit of pronunciation, sometimes it's a piece of grammar, but once you identify it, then you can focus your effort to be able to conquer that issue and then move forward. But when you find the weakness, or if you know the weakness, you can begin to plot your journey. What I would suggest though is to focus on 1 or 2 things within a month. Don't focus on everything. Focus on everything, nothing will improve. Focus on one thing you really struggle with. For example, if you really struggle pronouncing the H sound, if you're Italian, if you struggle with the R and L sounds because you're from Southeast Asia, for example, the I and the E sound. If you're struggling with grammar, maybe past and present tense or prepositions, you focus on one thing. You focus on, I would suggest, one piece of grammar, one type of pronunciation, and one set of vocabulary for 1 month. Become as good as you can at those things, and then you can add something new on. Otherwise, nothing will improve because you're not focusing on those things when you eventually start speaking. And if you're unsure about what vocabulary or what accents you need to practice for listening, this chart is going to help you a lot. If it's something that you talk about or listen to, someone you listen to at least once a week or more than once a week, no less, more than once a week or once a week, you need to know the advanced version of that thing, the advanced vocabulary, for example. So these things for vocabulary will be things to do with your work, things to do with your hobbies, things to do with your family, things that you might come up in your life once a week or more. If they come up in your life once a month or more, intermediate level vocabulary, intermediate level of listening skills to a certain accent. If you only hear it once a month, you don't need to worry about it too much. And if it comes up once a year, maybe, or between once a year and once a month, beginner level, you don't even need to focus on it, because this is where you're wasting your time. And this is exactly what native speakers do. I'm from the south of England. I wouldn't be concentrating too much on the Scottish accent because I rarely come up against people who use the Scottish accent. So there's no point in focusing on it. And that's why many native speakers struggle to understand other people from within the country. So that's the interesting thing. Native speakers also don't understand other accents. Native speakers also don't understand people who are talking about topics they know nothing about. It's very similar. It doesn't affect their fluency though, because they're then able to communicate in a beginner style to be able to get through a conversation that happens once a year. Remember, if you have one bad conversation, you have to put it against all of the conversations that you ever have. So if you have one bad conversation out of 1,000, that doesn't make you not fluent in a language. It just means you had a bad day, or you talked about something you don't know, or you met someone with an accent you're not used to. Doesn't make you a bad person. It just means it can't be helped. We all have bad days. It is what it is. Don't worry about it. Just remember, continue to go forward. Don't let that one time get you down. So now we've scheduled in the study time. We know what we want to study. We can now build targets around those things that we want to study, but the next stage is to make the uncomfortable feel comfortable. So English fluency isn't just about how good you use English on an everyday situation. It's the different situations you come up against that affects your fluency in specific conversations. A great example is one day you're talking at your job and you feel comfortable, you can do mini meetings, but then you have a meeting with the boss of the company. The way that you overcome that is by going in and having conversations and being willing to push forward through that feeling of lack of comfort. You have to push through it in order to feel more comfortable. The more times you do it, the better you're going to get, the more success you get, the more comfortable you feel, the more confident you are. It comes through repetitions. Lionel Messi didn't become as good as he was by not going through the process of practicing things regularly. So the more times you practice each situation, just as much as grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, situational based events, the better you're going to get. But there are ways to improve that situation as well. If you are someone who wants to improve their spoken fluency, what you should be doing at home every day is speaking out loud in some way, shape or form. You speak to your dog, speak to your mum, even if she doesn't understand. Speak to your phone if you have to. Have a conversation with Siri. There's so many apps out there. Hello Talk, for example, where you can speak to different people. You can use social media. There's so many resources out there now where you can practice your speaking skills. Very simple one you could do right now is to go get a book and read it aloud. Very, very simple. Read it aloud, time yourself. Pick one paragraph or one page, read it and time yourself whilst you're doing it. And then say, I'm going to do it 2 more times and I want to improve my time each time. It's going to build up that ability to recognize certain structures and say them more automatically, but also it helps improve your fluency because you're reading things the first time, you don't know what's coming, but the second time you know what's coming. The third time you definitely know what's coming. And it's very similar to situations that you have, maybe at work or with people. You go and meet someone for the first time, very awkward. Second time, a bit more comfortable. Third time, you basically know each other. You get that feeling of comfort comes with the more times you do it. It's totally the same for your speaking skills. Another method is the shadowing method. If you haven't done that, very simple one. You pick someone you like, someone that you want to sound like, that you really enjoy listening to, or you pick a topic you're really interested in and you mimic the people using that topic. I had a student do this. They did a fantastic job with this shadowing technique. They loved chat shows. What they ended up doing was they did a video recording of the talk show going on, then they put it in a video editor, they cut the sound off of one of the people and they tried to reply to the questions the person was asking with everything they were saying to improve their fluency, to build up that quickness in their speech because they were a little slower. So it's a good way that you can build your fluency by practicing shadowing and then putting yourself in their place. Very, very unique techniques that really push you to the next level. The next thing is begin to incorporate more English within your life. If you're watching TV, try to watch it in English as much as you can. Even if you don't understand, that's fine. The more time you spend with it, the more you understand. When you're listening, try to search for things that you do know, not stuff that you don't know. If you spend too much time on the stuff you don't know, you can't listen to as much stuff. You'll pause and you'll be stuck for a while, then you rewind and you'll just listen to the same thing over and over. No, go past it. In a conversation, you're going to go past those things anyway. So just try and understand the situation from the things you do know, and then that will help you move forward and incorporate more things. Podcasts, reading in English, trying to have more conversations in English, just listening to something on the way home from work even. Just change it more into English. The more time you spend with the language, the better. Input is very useful, even for spoken fluency, because the more you listen to, the quicker you're going to be in responding to people when you come to a conversation. And the last thing is to never give up, because if you give up, you can't reach your goal. I promise you that. And you can definitely get there, but you need to spend the time, put the effort in, and just keep going, and you will be there. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this one, because it's definitely going to help you become more fluent in English.